Hello everybody. Thanks a lot for coming to our panel today. My name is Matthew Rex, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Schematic. And I really appreciate you all coming and joining us, and thanks to Microsoft for throwing this event. I want to talk for a few minutes about the discussion today, the title of the panel, which you all saw on the sign outside or in your brochure and chose to attend, and telling you about that and why we called it what we called it and why we chose these topics and invited these guys to weigh in on them today. I'll get to introduce myself and our company, and then I'll ask these guys to introduce themselves and their companies, and then we have some stuff that we'll talk over. But I'd like to get you guys to introduce yourselves first so that we know who we're talking to. And I like to kind of divide the attendance of this conference into business people who do business stuff or product development stuff, and then creative people who do design stuff, and technology people who do technical stuff. So how many of the first category of people are business people or product developers? Okay, so I think everybody else is in the debugging IE7 session. How many creative people are here? And technical people, software developers and the like. Okay. So anybody who couldn't answer that question, if you had existential panic when I tried to divide you into one of those three categories, then you should come and work at Schematic. We've got a job here for you. That's what we're all about, to be at the center of those things. So the title of the discussion today is E-commerce Done Right, and I wanted to start by talking about why it's called E-commerce Done Right. I think that was obvious from the description of the session. E-commerce to us, to me, I think to our company and to our clients, incorporates a lot more than just eBay and Amazon.com, which is what I think you all think of when you hear the term e-commerce. E-commerce is really incorporates any business that's being impacted by digital media and the web. And I think that most famously includes sort of digital content businesses, a lot of media and entertainment businesses like television, online, and music and feature films and the like on the web. It includes user-generated content and Web 2.0 business models and social networking and stuff. It also includes the whole industry of interactive advertising, which is really important to a lot of the people in this room, I'll wager. Certainly very important to us at Schematic, to our clients, and to Microsoft. And so we're going to be talking about that whole range of e-commerce businesses that incorporate all of those different types of companies. So that leaves the done right part. What does it mean to do e-commerce right? And I hope that one of the answers to that question is that that's the way that we're doing it at Schematic for our clients. We want to be doing it right. Our observation and the idea that led to this panel discussion was that increasingly we could measure the success of our clients' projects by how well they brought together, on the one hand, a kind of platonic ideal for the user experience, and compromise that with the business realities and the technical realities that they face. And I think increasingly we see that at the nexus of those two things, by synthesizing those two things, you get really great outcomes. And it's fun to think about how that looks when it's done wrong. If you come at a business strategy just from the platonic ideal of the user experience, you may be litigated out of business, or you may find that you're having a hard time making money. On the other hand, if you come at it just from the perspective of your technology constraints, or the way that you're accustomed to making money, you might not be able to attract and retain the customer base that you need. And so at Schematic, we do a lot of work, and the way that we kind of fit in with other interactive agencies is that we're really focused on building digital destinations, kind of products and services that people want to use. And that's in contrast to, I think, a lot of interactive agencies that work primarily on marketing and advertising and of taking in a brand's message and getting it out there. And much more of our work is developing things like the product that I demonstrated in the keynote yesterday, the NBC Olympics Silverlight player, which we've been working on for Microsoft and NBC. And we've done a lot of other products like that, like the ABC full episode player and Vomgo for stars and things like that. And I like to think that the really great outcomes that we've had in our portfolio have been the result of great compromises between user experience and business model. And I'm going to start by giving you a little bit more detail on one example of that, and I'll introduce our panelists and ask them to kind of give you some examples of how they've been making those difficult compromises. We've been working for ABC Television for several years on their full episode player on abc.com. How many people have used that product, watched an episode of ABC Primetime? A bunch of people. And That's been a really successful business venture for them. And I think the thing that's made that product successful is, first of all, it's a great user experience. As a viewer, I watch Lost sort of compulsively. And every week I sit down and I have a great time going and finding the new episodes of Lost and all the programs that are available there. It's a really immersive interface. And it's got great playback features. It's got a great image quality. It's got all the playback controls. I can see when the ads are coming, and when the ad comes up, I know how long it's going to take. So those are all user-centric features. From the business perspective, it's also been a really great product for advertisers, and they found that they're advertising in the ABC player, which is a much different ad format. Please take a look at it. I think it's a good example of what's going on in the interactive ad business. The ad format performs better for advertisers than banner ads. People are less disrupted by that, the format of ad that's in that player. There's a timer that counts down, so unlike in a pre-roll or a mid-roll ad insertion, you know how long you're going to be stuck watching the ad so that you can switch over to Outlook and check your email or go make a sandwich like you used to do. And the ads also perform better because of that. People positively associate. They report that they enjoyed the experience of watching online, and they weren't harmed by the experience of seeing the ad. And so that makes for a better product for the advertiser, and that translates into ABC being able to charge more for it, having more advertiser customers, making more money. So that's been a really great success for us. And that kind of the intersection of those two forces is what gave us the idea to have this panel and led me to invite these friends and colleagues and clients of ours to talk about it. So I'd like to start out by asking each of you guys to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do for your employers and the products that you've been working on over the last couple of years. Jerry, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Jerry Johnson. I'm with HSN. Some people don't put two and two together, which is Home Shopping Network. I work in the Advanced Services Group, which is a relatively new group. We formed about 3 years ago, and as principal design and engineering, we're kind of focusing on kind of the next generation or next wave of HSN experiences that we want to deliver to the customer. Started originally on our e-commerce site, hsn.com, that we launched in 1999. That has been growing tremendously and has had a lot of success. Being the first TV shopping channel in the United States, this being our 30th year, it's really, really interesting to see. Some people will be saying, "Hey, what's HSN kind of doing at a conference like this?" And talk about some of the stuff we're doing with Silverlight and so on. But one thing kind of stuck out in my mind at Steve Ballmer's talk, and it was, the successful companies are the ones that really, are kind of reinventing themselves, that are pushing themselves, that are not just being content to just, stagnate. So we're doing a lot of things. We've been doing the TV things, like I said, for 30 years. We're in, 80 plus million homes in the United States with that. We have a very successful and a very popular e-commerce website, like I said, that continues to get a lot of awards and continue to grow. We have catalog businesses. A couple of new launches within my group over the last few years. We launched the first TV shopping interactive application, our Shop by Remote application, in the United States a couple of years ago, and that has been very successful, and that's available to 14 million digital subscribers. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback, and it kind of just reaffirms kind of our thinking as far as delivering experiences that the customer really wants to engage with on whatever the platforms and channels that they want. We also launched our HSN Vision application, which is a media center Vista application experience in December. So it's a very TV-ish like video-centric application that has actually 10,000 plus videos in it. So it's not coming from a perspective of it's a web experience with video as an afterthought. That experience it's video front and center with a lot of the kind of the best practices and a lot of the things that we know customers are looking for from the web. So customer reviews, all of those things, pulling that in into this TV type experience, and working with Microsoft on media PCs, also on extended devices, which is interesting, because there's this notion that the digital home is going to be controlled with a PC, but that doesn't necessarily have to be. You see consumer type devices, extended type devices, whether the 360 or other type devices, and these experiences will work on all of them. Most recently, we also launched, as the 1.0 wave of Silverlight partners, we launched our HSN.TV experience. So this is a very rich, interactive type experience which brings the live linear channel to broadband with a lot of additional interactive type features. So some of the things from, if you were at the keynote yesterday and saw some of the NBC Olympic stuff, we have some on-demand offerings, and we're kind of trying to, really get a sense as far as what works, what doesn't work, how do you mix, what's the right kind of mix of on-demand versus live, and how does the customer respond to that? You don't overload them with just a lot of stuff that perhaps doesn't make any sense. We also have a play in mobile that we did a few years ago, starting off with, and that market is kind of maturing in the United States. So currently we're doing texting and alerting and so on. And we're looking at some other opportunities to deliver more rich experiences, so video and more product search information and so on. So,
thanks for that, Jerry. Steve.
I'm Steve Nelson, and I'm the Director of Product Management at Netflix for our instant watching product and our user experience on PC and TV for that. I'll come back to that in a second. Prior to that, I ran my own agency for 13 years doing interactive entertainment, Peter Gabriel's first CD-ROM, games for Hasbro, a lot of interactive television design work, Comcast, Cablevision, Hearst, Entertainer, and also high-end information system design and production for Warner Brothers, the Air Force, DARPA, and so on. So a pretty wide-ranging experience, but kind of all about what Matthew was talking about in terms of creating really rich customer experiences. So coming back to Netflix, we're at the opposite end of the spectrum here in terms of advertising. We're a subscription service. We don't put advertising in front of people. We see that as a benefit for those who want to pay for a subscription to our content. And so this last year we launched our instant watching service, which is streaming movies to your PC, and now we've announced how we're going to get that to the television. And so over time, that's become a bigger and bigger and bigger part of the Netflix business, but we also see the disc business being viable for a number of years to come, maybe even 10 or 15 years. And so we offer this hybrid blending of getting your stuff on DVD and getting your stuff instantly. And again, I'll talk more about this in answering some of the questions, but we're evolving more and more toward the television and instant delivery over time.
Thanks. Nick?
My name is Nick Rockwell. I'm the CTO for MTV Networks Digital Businesses. Familiar with MTV's big brands, I'm sure, MTV, Nickelodeon, VH1, Comedy Central.
Heard of it.
Yeah. There's a range of others. Logo is a gay and lesbian channel. There's country music television. Spike TV is another emerging brand for us. Then there's some internet-only brands that we've got as well. Neopets and Shockwave are a couple of examples. And then we have a very large global business as well. We're active in probably 45 or 50 markets around the world, of which 12 are probably quite significant. And in some cases, we have local brands only in those markets that are important to us as well. Overall, I think we reach about 100 million uniques a month if you across Viacom, actually putting everything together. So significant audience, primarily advertising businesses built around content and primarily video content. On the other hand, we've been involved in some other kinds of projects. We built and ran a music service called Urge that we just recently merged with Rhapsody, which was an interesting experience for us and one that was quite relevant to this discussion and the trade-offs between different interests in product development. We're always working on the video experience and experimenting with ways to make that work better online. And I'd say right now we're in a mode of doing everything that we can think of all at the same time.
Great.
Another trend that we're dealing with is recognizing that while our brands are very important, our shows and our show franchises are equally important and in some cases even more relevant and top of mind for our viewers. So we're looking at ways to take our important franchises and make them first-class citizens on the web, basically, their own destinations, their own activities, and as much as possible tightly integrated into the TV experience such that we're now looking at show development and franchise development holistically and thinking what happens online, what happens on air all at the same time. Some examples of that right now are, not a perfect example because it isn't so important on air anymore, is jackassworld.com, which is a a site that we've launched actually as a joint venture with the creators of Jackass, which has been a difficult but important step that we've had to take on the business side to solve some of the rights issues that really make it hard for us to have historically made it difficult for us to do everything we'd like to for our viewers and our users. So in this case, there's a destination for Jackass. It's available, or within a few weeks it'll be available in 12 or 14 languages. All the content. It's the platform for launching the Jackass 2.5 movie. The primary platform for distribution for that film. South Park, we'll be launching a vertical dedicated to South Park very soon. That'll have all the content there. Again, as a joint venture with the creators of that show. So this kind of going franchise by franchise and blowing it out as much as we can, even independent of our brands, is a trend that we're dealing with and trying to get really, really good at. A couple of other things that we're engaged in now that are interesting to us are casual virtual worlds or casual MMOGs, depending on your perspective. We've done a lot of experimenting over the last year and a half. Nicktropolis is one that we've launched, which is like a 2.5D Nick-themed, kid-targeted virtual world. There's a few others that we've done, which we view as experiments, and a lot more to come in this area. We think it's really interesting and has a lot of potential, and we're going to really be investing and doing a lot more. And last, we're involved in a project called Flux that I'm very excited about. This is actually another company that we just have a relationship with, but it's a project that we're really putting ourselves behind. And I would describe it as a casual, open social network. I just came from the social networking panel a little while ago, which was pretty interesting and got into a lot of the sort of long-term problems around data portability and so on. And we don't know that we have the answer to all of that, but we're trying to take a stab at it. And we think what sets this apart is we're just looking to add value to users and to add value to the experiences of our media properties, such that we don't need to try to retain control over all the user data. And I think that's something that's getting people like Facebook and MySpace actually into trouble with their users. So we're trying to find another way that's kind of lightweight, kind of casual, doesn't ask a lot of people, but allows us to develop in a different way.
Great, thanks. So hopefully if I've done my job now, everybody understands why I picked these three guys, or asked them anyway to come and join us. Those are all sound like really hard jobs to me, and I'm sorry. Good luck with all of that stuff. I think you guys really are trying to do everything all at once, and it's some really interesting challenges that you're facing. So I wanted to see if I could get you guys to help me validate the assumption that's implied in the title of the session today, that there's a way to find compromises between kind of ideal user experience and the realities of your business model and the technology constraints and limitations that you live with. And so I thought I'd see if I could get you to talk a little bit about challenges that sound like that you faced and the outcomes that you've had. And Steve, I thought you could maybe take a crack at that one for us first. Sure.
Obviously that's inherent pretty much every project we all do, but I guess the example I picked would be our instant watching product. And some of the great things I already touched on. It's a subscription model, and in January we actually switched to allowing people to watch unlimited. They can watch whatever they want. We've got 7,000 plus titles now. We'll have 10,000 not too long into the year. And so people are eating it up. It's instant access to these movies. You fire it up on the screen and you're up and running watching a movie within 30 seconds or less. And one of the benefits of this unlimited model is you can go and check out a movie or a TV show. You don't like it, you back out, you go try another one, and you can settle on something you really like. And there's no risk to that. And we see a lot of that behavior, and then people finding those things that they really enjoy and really digging in and watching them. On the compromise side, we have big rights issues also. We license content from all the movie studios and other content owners. And because of the kind of content we get in particular, we have some pretty restrictive requirements for digital rights management and protection of that content. And so one of the compromises right now is that there's not I'll step back for a second. We want our customers to be able to watch on any screen they want, so whether that's a Mac or a TV or a PC. And so the compromise right now is that there's no DRM that we're able to license currently that's approved by the studios for our usage for the Mac and some of the other platforms. And so we want to get there, but that's something where we had to compromise, and now we're going to look for those other solutions to get us there as soon as it's economically and technically viable. But that's a big trade-off, and we want our entire audience to be able to watch movies. And so the reality is that's not possible right now with the kind of content we have.
Jerry, Nick, you guys want to weigh in with a case study on that, or?
So, having kind of a play in various areas, I mean, the focus for us always has been distribution, right? I mean, you have something and you want to get it out, how do you actually go down that path of distribution? And it's funny, though, that, where DRM is a big issue for you, I mean, with HSN, where we pretty much own all our own content, rights is not an issue. In fact,
I've noticed on Canal Street in Manhattan, you really can't buy any HSN programming on pirated DVD right now. No matter how
at any
badly-
price.
At any price, yeah. I tried to negotiate with the guy, but he didn't have it.
so, it's kind of our mantra to, take all that content and to put it out there, and, we want people to pirate it and distribute it and put it out there. So distribution has always been a challenge in the various platforms. I mean, from a TV perspective, from a broadcast perspective, we're pretty much set over there, and there's really no more opportunities for distribution. But when we look at some of the other experiences, the Shop by Remote application, which is our interactive experience on a cable box or on a satellite system, just using your remote control. And there's a lot of technology hurdles in there, when you deal with operators and closed networks and different technologies and trying to get, some legacy technologies working with, internet technologies and so on. It can get frustrating because you know that this is an experience that works well in the markets that you're already deployed to. The customer is responding very, very to it. And now, once again, it's just a matter of getting that distribution in that space. I think when it comes to the internet space, apart from the hsn.com site, we're looking at pushing out new types of experiences. And a couple of the experiences that I mentioned earlier on was our HSN Vision experience on Media Center Vista. I think one challenge over there is, even though it's a great experience, the challenge has been, I don't know if a lot of people actually know what that green button is and what type of experience it actually launches. They get Vista and it has Media Center, but they really don't use that capabilities. So we leverage a lot of our TV broadcast to educate the user on, yes, you can do all these great things with your digital assets and so on, but you click this button, you go into this whole experience where there's a lot of cool things you can actually do with that. So part of that challenge has been education. And finally, with some of the things that we're trying with Silverlight and partnering up with Microsoft and Schematic, actually, who did a great job on both those experiences, is the HSN TV experience. We have the experience, and just by the fact that you need the runtime and it's relatively new since its launch, it's going to take time. And it's great to hear Scott saying, the 1.5 million downloads per day. I think the big events, and things that people like what AOL is doing with their new mail clients, and the Olympics, and a lot of those things, I think, just kind of helps us with that distribution. So it's the same problem, but in a different space as far as delivering that experience, but getting the distribution to do that.
One of the things that I think is neat about hsn.tv is it's the only application that I can think of where you come to the homepage and it's all video, right? And all the user interface elements are right there composited with the video. And you think about how that really provides the user with the functionality that they want, where in other contexts you would never want to obscure the video with interface elements. Not every other context, but I thought that was a really interesting thing about that product.
All video all the time.
Right, exactly. Nick, did you want to weigh in on that one, or you want to pass?
Sure. I think real quick, the big one for us is video advertising online, and what's the right amount to pile on, because we'd love to have as much inventory as we can get our hands on. And the difficulty there is that consumer expectation has been set by YouTube, which is none. So how do we deal with that?
Right.
We're still trying to sort it out, looking at what ABC's done, looking at what Hulu has done and what everyone's doing, and finding our way on that one. I also have a lot of sympathy for what Steve was saying, just from our experiences with Urge. I happen to personally be a huge believer in subscription content businesses. Just as a user, I think they're really, really great. But it requires a huge leap of faith. Someone has to take a big leap and a lot of risk, vis-a-vis the rights holders who are used to a different model where one unit is one payment. And there's a lot more variables in the equation, and it can be very difficult to make that happen. And we struggled too with a whole lot of constraints and strings attached to the subscription proposition that made an already complicated sell that much harder to explain to people. And I think that's held things back, unfortunately, because I think at the end of the day, it's great for consumers and something that we as content companies need to have in our arsenal as well. So.
Let me seize that great segue when it's offered. I think that there are a lot more great subscription business models in the market today than there were 3 or 4 years ago, and when I think the options people were sort of thinking of were either free or ad supported. And one of my favorite products, as you guys know, that I think does a great kind of dance between user experience and business realities is the whole Apple Music ecosystem. I don't think anybody likes DRM, and the users don't want to live with it. But my experience with Apple, and I think the success of that business has been that the rest of the user experience, other than the DRM restrictions, is so good and makes the process of finding music that you want, buying it, getting it onto your computer, getting it onto your device, and enjoying it, makes that all so easy that I've come to view the DRM restrictions as kind of part of the price. It's like $1.99 plus a little bit of frustration, Another example of that, kind of the other, with a different business model that I think is a spectacular realization of that compromise, is this service called Pandora that's an ad-supported digital radio service. And I find now that I listen probably to 60 or 70% of my music listening is in Pandora, which is ad-supported or subscription, I should say. You have both choices there. And whereas 2 years ago, I would never have imagined subscribing, paying money every month for digital radio or internet radio when I had all this music on my browser. It's just such a great way to find music and discover it, even better than digging through my collection. So what are some other of your favorite examples of great compromises or great outcomes in terms of the user experience and balance between finding what the user would ideally want and what the business really requires? And Nick, let me have you start with you. You kind of take that one away. And for each of the following questions, you guys, feel free to jump in or interrupt. I know we had in the rehearsals of the questions some throwing of chairs and a lot of screaming. I thought that would be great if we could get that going again today. And you each can pass on only one question. Just get one pass. Go ahead.
First of all, it's really unfair of you to stick me with this one, because as you know, I struggle to come up with examples. I'm not sure that, there aren't so many. There are lots of bad examples. And then there are a lot of examples that are just built on unsustainable business models. And this is a huge theme on the internet, has been from day one, where people build their businesses without monetizing them for so long, for years and years. And it's created this persistent expectation amongst users. And there's always somebody in any given space who's running on VC money, not putting any ads up, not worrying about it, just trying to build their audience. That there's always a free or nearly free or almost advertising free alternative for almost any kind of service out there or product. So it's really tough, and I don't view those as good balances because they're just not going to work forever. There's an expiration date on those things. People are writing checks that they can't cash. So it's very difficult to come up with positive examples, in my opinion. So some negative ones.
Please, by all means.
I mean, I would take some shots at some of the pillars of the internet economy right now. I actually think that that search is really headed for trouble, and that paid search is increasingly being drawn into scary bad territory, where you just ask yourself, well, you ran a search, why are there paid search results? There must be something wrong with the algorithmic results. And what incentive in the long term does any search engine have to keep investing and improving the algorithmic results when actually they get paid for the badness of the algorithmic results? So there's a real conflict there, and I think that's going to be a problem as time goes by. I'll try to find one positive example, and it's early days, but I think you have to give credit to Hulu. First of all, for just getting a product launched. Considering the structure and everything that went in there, I was a real skeptic, and they've done a great job in coming to market. And if nothing else, they've really tried against a lot of powerful interests, that I'm sure are a lot of pressure. They've really tried to start from first principles, try to get it right, really think through the advertising models that they're getting behind, and putting something new out there. And I think you have to give them credit for that.
Two quick examples. One of them's a series of web apps from a company called 37 Signals, Basecamp and Campfire and Backpack and others. And these are really nice, clean, focused, targeted applications for project management, personal calendaring, and I guess contact management, stuff like that. And they all dovetail really nicely. They've got a great subscription model where they let you in for free to try out the app, and then there are tiers you can pay for on a monthly basis. And they've done a lot of that trade-off of feature set versus complexity versus what their users are clamoring for. And I think they've done a good job of balancing that. Some accuse them of arrogance, but the fact is they've got something like 1 million customers paying for this Basecamp product. And Jeff Bezos invested in their company and so on. They're a really good example of how to just really focus and target things on the web and do a successful subscription model. And then the other thing for me is the iPhone, which absolutely has compromises, AT&T and Edge Network and so on. But I think it's just a fantastic and innovative device. I love using it. The UI, the gestural and touch UI is great. And then just having all those things in one place. A couple years ago, if you asked me what I want my phone and my music and these other things all on one device, I said, no, that's crazy. And the fact is, now that I've used it, I think they've done a fantastic job, and it's really useful. It's a great product. It'd be interesting to see where it goes.
So just a couple of comments. I mean, I think being kind of in the media business and trying to launch some of these experiences, products like Slingbox from Sling Media, I think, have been extremely helpful for us as far as allowing us to not only keep tabs, but continue to kind of evangelize those experiences when you don't have those capabilities for us. So it's tremendously helped us. We talk about time shifting with products like TiVo and so on, and with Slingbox. I mean, those were the first guys that came out and allowed you to kind of play shift, right? It's like I have this compelling content. It always goes back to content, right? If there's something that's out there that's really compelling that you need to get to, people will pay for it. People will kind of download it, or people will use products like Slingbox and so on. So it's really, for me, it's one of those exciting products. And I think as they continue to roll out clients, at CES they were showing a client for a BlackBerry and so on. It allows us to do that kind of stuff.
Terry, let me ask you a question about that and about HSN. This thing that's always surprised me so much about HSN is how many different platforms you guys are doing products on, and how close to the early adopter demographic a lot of those products are. Because when I think of the average media center user, I don't think of that person as an HSN customer. I think of the HSN customer as being kind of ancient, but you guys are really much closer to the innovative and risk-taking end of the product development spectrum than you would expect, having what I think of as a not very innovative early adopter demographic. Am I wrong about that? Do you guys have a much bigger customer base, or are those users, are your customers bigger adopters of those platforms than I imagine, or is there another reason that you guys are so out there with that stuff?
No, so I mean, there absolutely is this core group of customers and demographics and so on, and they are very valuable customers and very loyal customers. But you've got to keep in mind that the people that are growing up today, or the people that even grew up with technologies 5 years ago and so on, with the internet and so on, we don't want to just kind of erode out and not have experiences for, I would say, a younger generation or a different type of customer that's coming up, right? So that's one. The other thing about it is, at the end of the day, what we are focused on is really delivering great products at a great value to the customer. It doesn't have to be an older, ancient type of customer. It could be a tech product. It could be some real tools, electronics, and so on that's available to it. And there is, I think, that wrong impression that you're either an HSN customer in this stereotype or you're not. And we kind of proved ourselves wrong. And actually, a lot of people, when we said, let's take this HSN content, 99% of it is what you saw on the linear channel, and let's not repurpose it, but let's take it and convert it and put it into spaces that potentially the HSN typical customer is not. So we started uploading to a lot of broadband sites, Google Video and YouTube and so on, and we get close to 1 million views per month on existing HSN content on those sites. And it's amazing if you go there, and we have a ton of content, 7,000-8,000 clips, and we continue to do that every day to keep that content fresh. It's across the board as far as the types of people that are watching it and the reasons why they're actually watching it. So
it reminds me, somebody told me that Oldsmobile, or I shouldn't single them out, some car brand did a study one year and found out that their average customer was 54 years old, and then they repeated the study next year and they found out that now their average customer is 55 years old. And if that happens 1 or 2 years in a row, you realize, first of all, you have a really serious problem, and second of all, you have a limited amount of time to solve it. So I think even for businesses who have found that today, that maybe the core of their customer base isn't online, isn't on mobile, aren't installing the Silverlight plugin, aren't using interactive TV applications, you need to have bets on the table that reflect the fact that that's a moving target, and that what you look at those numbers today as kind of being frozen in amber. By the time you figure it out, it could be too late. So.
And at the same time, you don't want to confuse the customer, right? That's our challenge, because you don't want them to say, well, how is this experience any different than this and this and this, right? So we're very cognizant of the capabilities of the platform, or how we're trying to deliver that. We're not trying to deliver a 16,000 product catalog on a mobile device. Mm-hmm. At the same time, what can we actually do on the different things? So it's important for us to do that.
I think for HSN too, it's just so clear that there's such a huge payoff when you finally are able to marry the best of the internet and the best of TV. That's what the product always should have been, and I feel that way about a lot of what we do as well. I look at HSN on TV, I think in a few years you might look at it and say that was a crappy prototype for what we can actually do now, and I think it's just it's such a great possibility that just cries out for the kinds of things that you're doing. You just kind of have to do it.
We were joking on the calls when we were preparing for this, which I assure you we did. We were joking that while I think HSN would be happy to have as many viewers as MTV or Netflix does, I think those guys would be happy to make as much money on each of their customers as HSN probably does. So it's kind of a flip side there of the business strategy. So I want to kind of wrap up the softball questions now and move into the hardball stuff and get some of the differing perspectives that we had uncovered on some of these issues. And you mentioned Hulu, and I had talked about the ABC player and some of the other video experiences that we've been working on. And I think one of the things that's really interesting is to look at how different players in the industry are heading in different directions with the way that they view the online video experience and the online advertising experience. And there are businesses like Hulu and Juiced and sort of Bright Cove that are increasingly standardizing both of those two things, standardizing the user experience. So as you move from one network's content to the next, you have the same content discovery, the same search, and the same user features. And you have the same kind of advertising formats that are there to provide an advertiser with real predictability in what the ad is going to look and feel like regardless of the content. And then you have companies like ABC and a lot of the MTV properties that are really innovating around both of those areas, that are creating video playback experience, content navigation, discovery, and the kind of wrapper around the video that's super differentiated on a property-by-property basis. And that are creating ad formats that are super differentiated on a property-by-property basis. And another thing that's really fashionable to do these days, I think, is to talk about the integration of social networking features and kind of Web 2.0 features with video, and bringing in the stuff that people do when they're not watching video and putting it alongside or next to or in the frame, or and trying to bring those things together. So my question is, should we be standardizing the video playback across properties, if you're responsible for a bunch of different types of content, should you be on the assumption that users really want it to look and feel the same from one website to the next, that advertisers really want the ads to be the same? Or should you be taking the perspective that your job is to really serve the user, and you should be differentiating the experience based on what you know about that user and what you know about the content? You should be differentiating the ad model based on what you know about the advertiser. Jerry, what do you think about that?
So I think, you can answer that depending on which side of the fence. Are you in the business of building these players, and you don't really know what the content is, so you got to kind of keep it vanilla and generic and so on. But I'm going to take the perspective of from an HSN perspective. So there's obviously certain things that you don't want to screw with, right? So if the user is this is how they turn the volume up, this is how they mute, this is how they maximize, this is how they do certain controls. It's that they've been accustomed to that through other types of players and so on. So you don't want to kind of screw with that. So you keep those things in place, and I think then where the value add for us is we want to, and this is what the hsn.tv site does, is we're gradually trying to include certain types of interactivity within the player itself, but just not totally take away from the video and so on. So the controls, the playback controls on, I want to see related items for the video. So when you're watching the TV experience, it's you're kind of forced to watch that's what's on. So the hsn.tv experience is you're watching that video in a very high quality, in a large format, so it kind of looks like TV experience. But now we're bringing kind of some of the things that we've learned from the web, right? So if I want to see different product shots of that images, if I want to see related items, if I want to see perhaps reviews, if I want to share this video with a friend, I can bring those controls, I can surface a lot of that stuff into this experience. And it's very subtle, right? It's not always in your face. You move on to the screen, the controls kind of appear, they slide in, they slide out. So that's an example of not messing with if the user want to minimize it, if the user wants to pause it, if the user wants to kind of, not with the live, but with the on-demand stuff, fast forward and so on, they understand what those images are. And then adding and try and play with an integrated buy button. So now I'm in there and I can press the buy button and do things that's specific to the HSN business that may not work with anything else. To the other point with you mentioned about ad, some people may think that our content is just one big ad, and you may joke that we says sometimes we stop to insert content in it, but and it's one of the early challenges we face when we try to kind of distribute that content, is that typically the distribution model is either pay per download or it's ad supported. We want to get our content out there, and we don't want it to fall into one of those two buckets. That's one of the early challenges that we had. So you'll see that a lot of our content doesn't have any ads, and if it does kind of have ads, it's really talking about shows that are coming up and other brands that we talk to. It's a Grand Prix race going on.
You hear that too? Huh. I thought that was just up here. I hear it's continuous for me.
So the playback experience, sure, some standardizations there. You should know how to pause and fast forward and rewind to some extent, although I think there are ways to add value there I'll come back to in a second. But for our kind of content, no one wants to have advertising popping up over Superman 3 or Juno or whatever it is you're watching on your TV set, especially from a subscription service. So we're sort of one step removed from that, and the real value for us then is the experience around how you find the right videos or things that you're interested in. And we do a lot of work with our recommendations engine, for example. We have over 2 billion customer records of ratings, and we use that to really fine-tune what we present to each unique customer who comes to the site. Everybody potentially sees something different that's really targeted to them. So all that discovery and title recommendation and search and browsing stuff is of great value and should be unique. That's a lot of the value add that we as a service provide. And we're doing a lot of work on that. And as we expand into the television, we'll be evolving into new ways to do that too. I'm really excited about that exploration.
Right, but you have a pretty amazing career as a product developer, I know. How would you react if some cable system shipped a interactive set-top platform that you were going to deliver the Netflix instant watching experience on, and it came with all of the content discovery and navigation, and it came with all the playback controls? do you view that as part of Netflix's mission, to figure out how do you think you know more about that than the cable companies?
I can't speak for the business overall on that, but that doesn't sound consistent with how we interact with our members and the experience we'd want to bring. So we do provide a unique setting, a unique experience, and real value. And we would focus on that. We wouldn't put ourselves in the position of just being someone who's serving up content sort of blindly behind the scenes to customers.
Great.
So I would say 2 years ago, we would have said I would have looked you straight in the eye and said with complete confidence, oh yes, we have to control the branding and the context around our video. We can add so much value and make such a great experience for users. And now, we're still a big company. You could ask a lot of different people in the company and you'd hear a lot of, crisp, well thought out answers. I look across everything that we do and I have to tell you that we have no idea what the answer to that question is, and we're trying everything. I think our confidence was really tested over the last few years in whether we could be successful with we're going to control this and we're going to build a big, heavy experience. And now we're doing everything. We're syndicating tons of video. We have sort of simple one-clip experiences on our sites. We still have some of the big kind of playlist-driven, heavier, richer experiences. We're just all over the place, and I guess. It's kind of alarming, and it doesn't seem like that could possibly be the right answer. But on the other hand, there's a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of different kinds of content. There's a lot of different users who want to do things in different ways. So I feel kind of, on the one hand, it drives me insane. On the other hand, I feel okay with this let's try everything approach. And I don't know what the answer is. We certainly like still to have to be controlling the whole context, but. Hey, if we get views somewhere else, we'll go for it.
I have a follow-up question for you, but and then we have one or two more questions, and then I want to take some questions from the audience. But let's flip that around for a second and look at it not just from the user experience, but from the advertising, from the perspective of the ad model and from the advertiser's perspective. Are your advertisers' needs being met by the commodity inventory that you have to offer? If you were to go and develop something that was a highly differentiated ad experience, are those ad sales people at the networks ready to go and sell that stuff to the advertisers? Are those advertisers ready to buy that from you guys, or is that are they not quite there yet?
I would say it's not quite there yet, and I would say we're just finding out whether that's going to work. But it's much more challenging. It's much harder, I think, for the advertisers to. They're much less comfortable not kind of knowing what the context they're going to be presented in as well as, and it's harder to sell. I mean, it's just whether or not, part of it is just cultural, and we're used to selling around our brand. But equally, it's difficult to sell. It's more complicated to say, well, your video can be all over the place. Your ad could pop up anywhere. That's hard to explain and hard to make it happen. It's also it's operationally very difficult. To make that work, to have consistent ad models. I mean, we can't even say, we can't always even control whether the ad's going to be a pre-roll or a post-roll or a mid-roll or whatever it's going to be in some of the syndication context. So, everything's kind of up for grabs. But on the other hand, there's potential for a whole lot of inventory. So.
You mentioned the social networking stuff too, and actually that's an area where, sort of contrary to what I said about the content itself, where I think you'll see us more and more opening up to the internet and allowing people ways to use some of the Netflix data and use some of their own personal data and share that. And who knows what we'll see built out of that. That's part of the beauty of the internet, that all kinds of things could be invented out of that. Another way to interact with our brand without us controlling it directly.
That moves right into something else that I wanted to talk about, which is I think one of the most compelling ways that people find out about new stuff, about the products and services that they buy, whether it's entertainment or music or movies or fashion or cars or whatever, is from their friends. I know when I get together with my friends, that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about. What movies have you seen? What music are you listening to? And things like that. And it seems to me like that hasn't really started to happen that much yet on the web, whether you're talking about Amazon.com recommendations, which are really kind of algorithmic and not related to what Amazon knows about me as a person, or you're talking about the reviews of a movie or a song in the iTunes store, which you don't know who the people who wrote those reviews are. They could all be 12-year-olds or 65-year-olds. And I find that really a really interesting opportunity out there in the market. And so I was giving some thought and looking around to try to figure out if there was anyone who was really doing that. And I know that Netflix, Steve, has a social recommendation service in your product, which I think manifests some of that potential. And there was another product launched this year that I thought was really what they were trying to do, was replicate that experience. Just give me recommendations from what my friends like. And that product was called Facebook Beacon. And Facebook Beacon was, for quite a while, I think the last 6 weeks or so, the fashionable thing to kind of vigorously hate and believe was a really bad idea. And I wonder how bad of an idea that really was. Wasn't the germ of the idea behind Facebook Beacon that there's kind of a value here for the user of finding out what products their friends would endorse? And man, that would actually open up the potential for me to say, hey, these are my friends whose ideas about movies I really care about. I would really love to hear that stuff from them and know what they're watching.
I thought the idea was to show they could actually make money off of Facebook.
Well, anything that you deliver value to a user, you ought to be able to monetize, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I think that, but I think the question was the failure there, was that a bad idea? Did people not really want to find out about stuff that way? Was it the fact that it wasn't something you could really opt into in a granular enough way? Or is that really not an experience that people want to have? Do people not really want to get information from their social network about products and services? Those two things need to just become completely separate.
So I came out as the hater on this one too. And on the one hand, I totally agree with you. It's completely natural, and it is valuable directly to users, and people do want to do that, and it makes sense, and it's a great way. It's the primary way that people find out about, particularly media like music, movies, books, things like that. On the other hand, the idea, like Facebook said things like, well, we just kind of got the opt-in part of it wrong, but that's the whole thing. That's the only thing that matters. And what it really is, it's user communication, and people don't want anyone controlling that or taking a piece of that in any way. And I think, what the backlash says is actually Facebook, they provide value, a lot of value to users, but they actually don't have a participation in that process. They don't actually deserve to get paid for one person recommending something to another person. They're not actually really part of that transaction because they can't prevent it from happening and they can't control it in any way. So why should they get
the value proposition was so skewed here? What were you getting in return for doing that?
Yeah.
Essentially nothing, and they were getting the free advertising. And usually you get something for your advertising.
Well,
free content.
I disagree. I think users were getting something out of it. I mean, when I find out from my friends that they liked a particular movie, and then I go and I see that movie, I know that's something that I'm going to talk about with those friends. And there's that flow of information. There's an exchange of value that I think really exists there. Now, I don't disagree that the thing was product developed wrong. And I don't disagree that it really smelled bad the way that it was launched and announced. But I think that it sort of seems to me like the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. And I was really excited about that baby. Or was it the bathwater? But anyway, I thought there was something really great to that idea. And maybe you could talk a little bit more about how social recommendations are working for Netflix and about the other stuff you guys are doing with that kind of recommendation.
I think we're just really in early days there and exploring. And one of the fundamental things that people enjoy about movies and TV shows is sharing them with their friends and family, whether it's sitting in the room and literally watching it together or talking about it afterwards. And so we know how powerful that is, and I guess the question is, how do you really capture that online and make it personal and relevant and interesting? So there's some other companies out there that have been working on that. Flickster is an example. Trusted Opinion is another one. And they're working around how maybe they could get groups of people together and make those recommendations more like it's your friends and people you know, as opposed to the faceless recommendations on iTunes, for example. And we have a friends area on our site. People can share reviews and look for other people who have similar tastes in movies and so on. Again, I'd say it's really early on. I don't know where this is all going. And for me personally, there's just something a little impersonal about doing a lot of that on the web, although I've discovered many interesting things that way. So there's a tension there, and I don't know how to resolve that.
I think one thing you talked about on our call that was interesting was that you found that the more algorithmic recommendations on Netflix were better, were more effective, objectively measured. But you mentioned Flickster, which I had looked at a little bit at one point, and I thought they were interesting because the quality of the recommendations was unbelievably bad, in my opinion. Like, it was just the same things kept coming up, and they were completely obvious, and it was just like, whatever. But it didn't seem to matter, and users seemed to, there was a lot of activity, people seemed to really enjoy it. And what I learned from that, I think, is that sometimes people just enjoy the activity of making recommendations or seeing what what their friends said, even if they don't actually get anything that valuable, or they don't actually want to watch the movies, or maybe they already saw them all, or whatever. But it's just like it was more like a game than like a shopping aid.
And I think you brought this up in the call too. And there are all kinds of TV shows and movies that objectively you might end up rating not that well once you've seen it, but it's part of a shared experience, and you want to go see
and you
those
still
big
want to see it,
blockbusters and other movies your friends have seen. You're going to see them.
Yeah, I think that what I kind of discovered after thinking about it for a while was that recommendations, even just calling it recommendations, we're really kind of commerceifying that process. It's not about commerce when we talk about it in our real lives, and it seems like we ought to be able to create user experiences that in and of themselves give value give value to the user by facilitating that kind of discussion and exchange of ideas with their friends. I don't think if you're doing that there's anything wrong with involving the properties or the brands that are kind of riding along in the conversation. It's almost seems kind of brilliant to do it that way. I mean, it's not the obvious way to finance the bringing of that capability to users. And so, Nick, what purchase was it that was revealed by Beacon that got you to feel that? No, I'm joking. So let me get one more question out. Did you want to add something to it, or?
No.
Okay. Let me get one more question out, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. As we have been through a couple of Microsoft keynotes and through another year of new product launches and new competitors and changes to platforms and technologies out, and we've seen a lot of renewed investment, startup business models, and new ways of monetizing the web. Are there any technologies that you think are going to really change the way that people do product development, that fundamentally make new ways of getting value either for businesses or for consumers possible? Or are there any new business models that you think are kind of game changers in the way that we do product development on the web? No.
I mean, who knows what kind of disruptive technologies and stuff will come along. But I think we're thinking more along the lines of an evolution toward more of an open web standards kind of future, and that there won't be so much of the proprietary lock into some really fascinating technology. It's more about being out there on many, many platforms and letting people have the Netflix or home shopping or MTV or whatever experience across many devices that are just out on the internet and have some sort of web browser built in. And you'll see that in TVs and set-top boxes and so on. So I think that's a big part of the future, and not so much a specific technology. One where I'd like to see some development is on 10-foot UIs, on television UIs, better interaction devices as we go toward more of the web-like stuff there. Obviously, text entry and pointing devices we haven't hit the sweet spot yet, so there's work to be done there. Will there be a game changer? Don't know, but I'm looking forward to seeing what we can come up with that'll make that easier for our users.
So, and I think, like, when you don't know, what's going to be that next big thing, you got to kind of hedge your bets by, doing a few little things, right? Or else if you don't make that attempt, or you don't try, then you've already failed, right? So in our case, I mean, we make sure that we don't mess with the things that are working. So going back to the experience and product, and really not letting the customer down, and then looking at what can we do in this space, this space, and this space. So obviously looking at emerging technologies, and we've done some stuff and looked at partners who have kind of come up with some innovative ways in which new navigation techniques on a 10-foot experience. But you kind of have to keep in mind that there's a huge investment, and users have been trained on navigating those experiences, up, down, right, left, and you're trying to kind of now bring experiences where you're using a mouse and you're not tied into certain types of navigation to that. So there's that hurdle right there. So from our perspective, don't really mess with some of the core stuff that that you built your business on. But at the same time, you place these bets. You have strategic partnerships, and you really kind of keep your eyes open and look at trends and so on. I mean, just like what we've been doing with the social networking. I mean, what some of the stuff that the Facebook guys are doing with their APIs and opening that up and making it a platform, it's really nothing new and groundbreaking, right? I mean, eBay and Amazon, a lot of those guys have been doing it in the past, and I think they have done that so that they have not become that social network flavor of the year. I mean, people are talking about MySpace, and now people are talking about Facebook and so on. So even we're kind of doing some of those things as far as we don't have all the right ideas. We don't have the next.
MySpace would have been happy to have a full year. That status. But.
So that's what we're doing. I mean, we're exposing a lot of our APIs, making sure that we segregate. There's some stuff with privacy and commerce and so on that we really want to control. The other stuff, as far as you want to go out and build, kind of the deal of the day, which someone took it upon themselves and done some screen scraping, and there's a Google widget, deal of the day, an HSN gadget you can add onto it. And we're going to expose that, and we're going to let, if there's great ideas that come out from from developers, then we'll support it.
Nick, I know you have perspectives on this because every time we get a briefing at Schematic from a vendor with a new platform, they tell me they've just come from your office. So why don't you tell us about what you've seen in the last year?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, being in a media company where, the executives come around and they're like, ask the tech guy, like, what's the new interesting technology? And actually, they stopped asking me because I always just kind of stare at them slack-jawed and say, there's nothing new. Because really, I mean, the story of the internet is pretty much everything was there in 1997, and then since then it's been either scale, reaching some tipping point, or reaching some threshold where like a marginal technology suddenly makes sense for everybody, or just happy weird accidents like MySpace where something just blows up and nobody really knows why. And I think we're kind of in the same place. Like there's nothing so much new, but there's a couple of tipping points that we're approaching, I think, and one of them is definitely basically just open browsers coming to mobile devices and hopefully someday to TV-connected devices. And it's one of those things where everyone rolls their eyes because it's like blah, blah, I've been hearing about this for years and years and years. Someday it's actually going to hit, and it's going to be still really important and impactful. The other one is just video. I mean, online video continues to evolve really rapidly. And I think actually, I feel like we're right on the threshold of a new wave of huge quality improvement that's going to have a really big impact. So again, like that seems like yesterday's news, but there's a lot more to come, and I think it's just maybe just another year or two before there's really no limitations at all on online video, and it works better than TV, and it's super great, and it seems like the obvious choice for video distribution in general. I think we're pretty close to getting there. And then the last one that's a little more out there is, MySpace and particularly Facebook are really tantalizing. I think Facebook has really shown how much value there remains in the idea of social networking and identity online that has been untapped even after all these years. But it's still pretty closed, and that has, it's not just rhetoric, it's got real consequences. And all of these attempts and ideas to like open up identity and have portable identity, there's a lot of talk, open ID, and lots of things, and none of it's really going anywhere. And it's really complicated, and it's very hard to figure out how that can get any traction. But if it did, somehow, if that really happened and you really had a portable identity, I think that would foster an explosion of innovation that would make the Facebook applications look like the toys that they pretty much are. So fingers crossed. I don't know how that's going to evolve, but it would be really cool if something happened.
Yeah, from just to kind of throw my own perspective in on this one, I've been thinking about this macro trend from now 15 years of making web stuff. I remember Sun's network computer and the kind of whole thin computing idea, and even as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was people were really excited about the thin client nature of the web, and boy, have we not heard a lot about that in the last 12 months. And we got through almost the whole hour or so here without saying Silverlight, but It's amazing to me that we saw a keynote on Wednesday morning where for fully 10 minutes, I think there was a CPU monitor on the screen, and we were being shown all the great stuff that we could do in the client, only using 10 or 15% of the dual-core 2.4 gigahertz processors that were in there. And I think that's a really interesting trend. It's really changed the nature of software development. It's changed the way that the workflow of product development happens, to have so much complexity and application logic in the client, whereas recently as 3 or 4 years ago, we were doing everything we could to get all of that stuff out of the client and get it into some kind of a middleware tier. And I think it's also kind of interesting that I haven't heard, and it doesn't mean that it's not happening, but I haven't heard from Adobe or from Microsoft a perspective on what impact that has on developer designer workflow, and how skill sets have to change, or how project management needs to change, or how architecture needs to change. And we're leaving some blood on the battlefield figuring that stuff at Schematic ourselves, as we do so much of that rich client kind of stuff. But I thought I would take that opportunity to get my 2 cents in. So thanks a lot for that, guys. You guys are really busy, I know, and as I said, all have really difficult jobs. I appreciate you taking the time to come and share it with us. And I'd like to give you all a round of applause, and then open it up and see if there are any questions from the audience. Thanks again. Yeah, do you want to step up to the microphone? I think that there are the people on the internet can also just go ahead and shout their questions in from the internet.
This is fascinating. Thanks. Recommender engines. I know maybe geared more towards what's going on Netflix. I find it fascinating that the person that's, I think in the top 10, has a background in psychology. So it's a kind of a two-part question. So I guess, Steve, for you, or to the panel, can you guys share insights on what skill sets you have on your teams to help with recommender engines? Because you touch all that. So what role for you, Steve, is social psychology? I guess, Nick, in your world, what role is clinical psychology?
So I don't manage that area, but that is definitely, we have a pretty rich team, a lot of unusual backgrounds. And one of the interesting things that's going on right now is we have this contest going on. We're giving away $1 million prize to just people out there in the world who can improve our root mean square error on our recommendation engine stats. And if you just go look at the list of who's in there, in fact, there was an article in Wire just in the latest issue that talks about who's doing this. And it's a pretty wide array of people. And one of the people they profiled is using psychology, social psychology, as the basis for his further explorations on the algorithms. So yeah, all of that fits into the puzzle. Although underneath it all, it's a lot of really heavy-duty math, too. So there's certainly that core skill, very talented scientists. Neil, do you want to comment on that? This is our Chief Product Officer, Neil Hunt.
Specifically on the recommender system stuff, there's skills from mathematics, from general science. There's administrative skills in terms of just managing the price process. I have a product manager who is an ex-film producer, director, who is deep into film culture and understands how to disassemble a movie into the granular components, the themes, the styles, there's an upbeat, there's a downbeat, there's a twist at the end, and we're working on a lot of different things of that sort too. And then of course there's range of engineering disciplines from building out very large, very scalable systems that can compute billions of predictions a day, all the way down to tools for a team of movie classifiers to be able to do metadata entry across about 500 movies a week, the movies they get in the system. So it's just, as Steve said, I think he tapped it well. It's a very diverse set of skills that cover a wide range of disciplines necessary to make the
What percentage men versus women? Just curious.
It's mostly men, but we've had, we've had a mix of 3/4 maybe, I think, in the team.
I'd like to just take this opportunity to distance myself from that last question. No, I'm joking. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm looking for recommendations, like I have to pick a new cell phone because we have a new corporate cell phone provider, there's a friend that I call and I ask which new cell phone do I want. When I'm going to see a movie, there are specific friends that I know are interested in movies and have always given me great advice. So I'm kind of hung up on that, the social aspect of that experience. And have there been experiments with moving that into that recommendation process at Netflix, or is it really kind of segregated into that?
Experimenting with all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. As far as from your competitive networks, and obviously the changing in the advertising model you're talking about, how big a part is product placement coming into your TV shows now? Given the fact that not only are you going to see it on the live TV broadcast, but now you're also going to continuously forever on your webcast.
Let me repeat that so that they get it on the stream. The question is, how important is product placement for MTV Network specifically and what they offer their advertisers?
So I would consider product placement one form of what we would call integrated sponsorship. And this isn't even branded.
Oh, I take that back.
So to answer your question, the broader integrated sponsorship in general, which might include product placement, might include a whole range of things, particularly on the web. It could be manifest in many different ways. It's really important, and it's a critical part of how we sell. On the other hand, there's an enormous amount of transactional overhead with those deals, and it's difficult to scale. So it's only ever going to be part of the equation. It's not a solution, and it's not a replacement for for spots of some kind that we can traffic and manage campaigns through and stuff like that. So it's a good thing to have. It's a great way to add value, build up a deal, but it's not an alternative.
What do you mean high transactional? What do you mean by that?
Well, because it's a lot harder to value, and it's a lot harder to measure. So it's a negotiation. And it's great. It tends to be a really big negotiation with big numbers coming out of it. But there's not a market for product placement in the way that there's a market for a spot. It just can't be commoditized in that way, which is both good and bad.
We were just talking before this discussion started, Nick and I, about a product placement thing that we're working on between one of the MTV networks and one of the advertisers that we are involved with. And one challenge is, how do you value product placement? The way that commodity ad inventory is valued according to very well-known and documented and standardized ways, and product placement is a little harder to value. Another, perhaps not as well as we'd like, but another problem has been figuring out how to structure the business relationships involved in doing those kinds of deals are different than the way that ads are traditionally bought and sold in broadcast. And the role of the agency, the role of the media buyer is different, and different people are doing business in different ways than they're accustomed to. So that has certainly been a part of the transactional cost of doing that deal in this example that we've been working on.
You're living in a world of people class-oriented commercials, right? TiVo is eliminating commercials on the live broadcast. But you were talking about how you take a recommendation from your friend over someone you don't know, right? Well, if you start to associate with the people in the TV show, and they, in some kind of warped reality, start to associate them as being your friends. So if Lauren from the Hills is drinking a Coke, you're going to say, well, Lauren likes Coke, maybe I should drink a Coke. So I think it starts to play a much more stronger influence than that.
But one problem is when we rerun that the 500 millionth time, we can't really traffic in a 7-Up can or a Pepsi, so that's a flexibility that we give up. And but on the other hand, it's true. I mean, the realities of all the vectors of attack on the traditional 30-second spot are real. So that's why we love the integrated sponsorship. We do a ton of it, and we're all about that. But it can't be the whole story. It can't be the whole answer.
So we've exhausted our allotted time. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your questions. Please come up and see us if you have any more questions. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon. See you next year.